So, in Robbins, Illinois, Bruce Rauner won as the governor. You used to live there, but you're still there. Bruce Rauner won the gubernatorial campaign against incumbent Pat Quinn. A huge development, though. You had a group of black pastors in Chicago who were ticked off that Democrats in the state had not done what they were supposed to do when it came to education over at least a decade. So, Reverend James Meeks, former state senator, he led them in terms of endorsing Bruce Rauner. Rauner wins. Earlier today, we talked with Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., and we asked him about that. You will be shocked with how he responded. Play.
I think it's a long-term strategy. Meeks will probably be right, because now if the Republicans got 25% of the black vote, that means they'll have to fight to keep it. Democrats have to fight to get it back, and that puts us in a position of being stronger.
Have a little more leverage. The Democrats, would you say, have taken black voters for granted, as they certainly could? We voted for them monolithically.
Because no matter how we're treated, then we come rather blindly back into the fold. On the boogie bag going to get us if we don't vote Democratic. I think that in many instances we have to assess the impact of being taken for granted. That is true.
Let's go national. Let's go national in terms of we understand.
Well,
Reverend says,
and the Reverend, when these other pastors came out and supported Bruce Rauner, you can believe that Reverend Jackson and those who were supporting Pat Quinn weren't saying, "Oh, they're right." They were saying, "Oh, this is a travesty." Some were even suggesting that it was a sellout. So to come back after the fact and say, you know what? Yes, the Democrats were taking us for granted.
But I think it's also that strategy.
Okay.
But again, to our panel, I mean, to this point, when Reverend Jackson says, as a result of this, Democrats in Illinois were just taught a lesson. And the issue goes to education. When they increased the state income tax in Illinois from 3% to 5%, it was Reverend James Meeks' bill when he was in the state Senate that the $2 billion would go to education. Democrats stripped it out later, kept the $2 billion, but didn't go to education. Every time they've tried to get the money to go to education, they said no. So Democrats control Chicago. They control Speaker of the House Mike Madigan is head of the state Democratic Party. You have the governor. So they got taught a lesson. Should this cause some concern, and should black folks be playing this type of political game in the future?
Well, it's kind of like what Martin Luther King III said. Black voters need to play active roles in both political parties, Democrats and Republicans. I would agree. And I think it's good when we have both parties competing for our vote, because we as black Americans stand to gain and benefit from it. Now
that you've gotten 25% in Illinois and obviously made some inroads elsewhere, because black people have been recently afraid of the Republican Party. You stand for many things which African Americans think is not in our interest.
And voter suppression is still a major issue.
Voter suppression, et cetera. But what are you going to do now to keep them?
Well, we're going to compete. We're going to close the economic and educational disparities that exist. Talking about creating real jobs now. We can start with the Keystone Pipeline. There's thousands of jobs that could get created tomorrow. We're going to talk about school choice and all of the above school choice agenda.
How about educational? How about equitable funding? How about equitable funding for education? Because as we know, you got
schools
for
too.
public schools, you got students in Illinois who get $19,000 per student per year. Then you got those who get $11,000 per student.
Tax cuts for who?
But Jason, I do want you to address this issue again. These black preachers going to their congregations and being very strategic. And they didn't say, oh, Bruce Rauner would agree with him on everything. What they said is, on the issue of education, Democrats promised this, and they failed us on every single one of those. And then they said, you won't do it, you will. They were strategic in doing so.
And it makes a lot of sense. Look, you saw the same thing in Mississippi, okay, where black folk went and voted for the other senatorial candidate during the primary because they're like, hey, this guy is less of a problem.
Supported incumbent Senator Thad Cochran over the deranged
crazy challenger who hated black folk and everything. So it's common sense politics. And we actually see this on the state level all the time. Remember, George Bush got 25% of the black vote when he ran for governor. So it's not
No, George Bush got 25% when he ran in the second term because Gary Morrow was a horrible candidate. But he didn't get it. He didn't get it in the first time we ran against Ann Richards.
Right. But
as a native Texan, I just want to.
I know.
Go right ahead.
He's got Texas. I got
Just go right ahead.
I got to pull out my
facts. Facts. Go right ahead.
But the point is, there is a precedent. There is a precedent for Republican governors being able to get African American voters at the state level. That's actually never been a problem. It is the national Republican Party that has trouble getting black folks to turn out. If that can be fixed, then yes, things can change.
But Judith, the problem though is when black folks start attacking those African Americans, as sellouts. You got paid off and all those things. In fact, Reverend Meeks was interesting. He made it clear to his congregation. He said, I've been living for 30 years off the love offerings for y'all. He said, I don't need somebody else's money. But again, for African Americans, folks are saying you're a sellout, but the preachers are saying they didn't do jack on education.
So, yeah,
what do you
they
think?
bought you for nothing.
What do you think I'm supposed to do?
The question is, who is the sellout, right? Are the people, are those elected officials are they the people that sold us out because they didn't do what they said they were going to do? At the end of the day, we have to vote our interests.
But how do you
as
make
a
sure they
community.
do what they promised now during the
Vote
election?
them out.
But this is the thing is you vote them out, but you can also get new candidates, because the problem is that Republican Party may not line up with everything else that you agree with, including voter suppression, right? Voter ID issues, all carried out by the Republican Party across cutbacks to early voting, et cetera. So they're really not the party for the Lincoln Party any longer, right? And so at the end of the day, we have to have candidates that actually do reflect our interests. And that means starting at the primaries. We need to be running people who agree with our agenda from A to Z.
And it's about an agenda, and I think the question is, well, what is it that we want? What is it that we want and demand from our elected officials? Is it jobs now? Is it some sort of voting rights reform? Is it closing the gap in education? And I think when you look at jobs and you look at education, Republicans lead on those things.
So
this is our bread and butter.
So Orlando, one second. Orlando, I got to ask you. Not a single Republican senator, now that they're going to control the Senate, not a single Republican senator has signed on to support the bill to reinstate the provisions that were struck down by the Supreme Court. Are Republicans, now that they have control of the House and the Senate, are they going to support that particular bill in order to strengthen the Voting Rights Act?
Well, we're going to have to wait and see, and we have to remember that.
Wait and see.
Harry Reid is still the majority leader.
The bill was there, and you all passed on it. You all passed on it.
Hold up. But for our audience, there's not a single Republican who has signed on as a co-sponsor to the bill. You have Sensenbrenner in the House who is pushing it.
Exactly.
A Republican.
Right. But the point is, that's the House. Will a Republican senator step up and say, you know what, I'm with Sensenbrenner, I'm with others who say we need to strengthen the Voting Rights Act. Will they do it?
Well, we'll have to see. Again, we'll have to see. But I will tell you, first and foremost, that our number one priority is jobs now. And I don't think black voters are a one-issue voting population.
But I'm asking about this one.
But this one issue actually kind of matters.
We'll wait and see. We're going to take a break, let you make a phone call. Okay, we'll come back and we'll see what they're going to do. All right?
When we come back, we're going to, and we'll talk about, again, a number of black Republicans who were elected. Is this a sign of the future and not just simply insignificant races? We'll break it down as well.